27 August 2023, we will invite you to please take a look at the effort CGQM Foundation.blogspot.com. It's an independent activity, and I'm the founder, the creator of the asset, and the stakeholder doing the defense of this and our interests related. We achieved a tremendous success and was told by me 10 years ago that we will make history, and indeed we may. We will have now something outstanding. Wife, help me clean the house one more time. No, that's talking a bit serious. We observe that this activity has 100 years of program science. We will move in the near future, not today, with things kind of we are taking a look, and we will have the reading that on our goals 25 2023 we had consequence affordable complaint, the model offered, and the procedure to confirm things we did. We reported today at the blog, the CGQM Foundation.blogspot.com, made years ago, and have today the result of things created, optimized, protected, and we are talking about program science in USA and Europe basically. We will observe that this credit from international financial system offered a diplomatic procedure, and the main thing here, considering things that we are kind of studying and take a look, even as a free rider, wanna be by my side? I can, ride, I'll let you ride. We will observe that the trust scheme is audited, and we had two drivers with an area at the center. We will have, and I'm having this, indeed I didn't finish yet, and we'll probably take at least an entire week reading all issues that are kind of supposed to be observed. That in the early days, as program language and program science, we observed that the concern was static, and you had kind of the idea, and was very functional at that time, which was a unit inside your inside your environment as activity you do at that time in the 20s. It was kind of the higher level as institutional development, and this kind of thing got lower levels inside the same organization, which can be a single machine, for instance, doing the idea as punch card in and out to confirm the payment made or the payment that she hadn't been made yet. And this helped at that time, for instance, to avoid fees and other consequences on time by payments required on space with a deadline on it. It's the general idea and the main premise as program. You must set your organization ready to accomplish the obligation on time and space at the moment that you must do. And the organization got so huge and so big that the levels we had at our company, 5 levels, are nowadays 5 continents, for instance. And in the same way, at that time, we had the idea as the integration of things from the top until the bottom. But this process we are observing here, from the top until the bottom, must be strictly made, or my departments will have a delay and my organization will have a loss because we will not be set on time to do the obligation required to be done. And also I must have as feedback my bottom give me the information and all things. I must have to feed the level-wise decision that must, have the strictly commitment with the paradigm as decision. We have to feed my organization or architecture. This workflow, such simple, became a piece of something that at that time was integrating the structure of data in a very specific area, and nowadays the entire global continent by the interaction and the interconnection as financial, and allowing to understand that things beyond the limits of my organization that goes from the square number 1 until the square number 5 as department or the capacity to do things and run the operations. And if I do something beyond the limits, I of course will need at least to consider some kind of optimizations. But to run an optimization, I must understand my environment. In a macro perception, I described it was basically observe the constitution in areas or department that you had this statement as guideline, but also observing that my organization as a workflow from the top until the bottom and from the bottom until the top feeding must have a single common language. Shouldn't consider have some kind of noise inside, and we observe that some programs in the past like has this as a paradigm inside or as a static movement that goes inside the procedural rhythm you are doing, or something dynamic considering in a near past the interaction of architecture and structure inside the embedded system and having the variance inside the system by the possibilities with the capacity to be incorporated as test or test of hypothesis inside the procedural rhythm you are doing using the structure you had, considering all options available. Then we will observe that when I got this, I will understand that the common language of my organization must be again something that unsets the premise as organization. And it's something required now to be codified because my machine will learn this by binary values very crude. And indeed, it's the situation as not perfect square or anything different from the square I had as the guideline as architecture setting the environment I do my things. This is equal to any other form that is not a square. And by this I can qualify, for instance, if the corruption had the domain of all things, by circumstance observed the contradiction and the contrary sense as logical procedure, I will have that the corruption of corrupted things indeed took the integrity of things that she would like to be made based on corrupted values. In other words, you pulverize the paradigm as program to unset the language and avoid the interaction of things corrupted, because you, as you can observe, create by this movement a distance between the past and the future. It's a cognitive gap applied inside the corruption architecture, setting a quote embedded system as criminality, covering things made to do not be exposed anymore. And then we will have something kind of touching the identity of things. But since I have my randomic access memory with the possibility to put me in a very first moment when I had this corruption as the corrosion of my arguments, at least since 1920, I will understand that up to 2028, I can have all this checked. And the unique thing I must do is understand the physiological argument, having the association of each level as department inside my company that will have a range of activity, and this activity will be decreased because the complexity will be higher. In general, you have a single CAO, a group of board members, in as a group a bit larger as managers, and the operational staff. It's the idea as something like this. And now we can understand that this physiological workflow we set since 1920 up to 2028, considering the violation you did in an area that do not allow this, which implies that everything you do that is not a square, I mean violating something which has no excuse to be violated, is a wrongdoing. By this wrongdoing, you, as an integrated system of things illegally made, since only God knows, but we set as an hypothesis 1920, which was the very first day, for instance, as a science program, to understand and review all things, considering critical events and things we are doing yet we didn't finish. This helped me to understand that the parallel mobilization, globally talking nowadays, was sourced at the past and had the continued but the gap from the past. But this gap from the past, currently unveiled, indeed will set kind of the paradigm as interval that you had the opportunity to just complain, which was the past, the current time, I would say, or the nowadays, today, and the failure at the past and the failure on nowadays that do not allow me to be set to solve my obligations on time will be the same perception at my company at the time, at my company nowadays, or as the interaction between continents inside the G20 summit, legally charged, with all consequence applied, as 38 trillion researched, which goes from the top and to the bottom, and must be from the bottom and to the top in solidarity to solve this obligation. And we are having the judicial order and the International Criminal Court on it, considering the complexity of the case. Review and understand everything that the corruption in the past is the same kind of thing as corruption nowadays. And sounds quite clear, at least to me, that some things never change. Even with a more complex environment, or something that you consider abandoned, a universal language is kind of universal. And if you had this at the past, and this universal language was set by the divisionist paradigm, the corruption of both indeed will call the attraction of both illegally talking. If you commit something illegal inside your business, probably you suffer a dismiss, and inside a criminal activity you probably will be murdered. But in both cases, not considering the reaction system you belong, you will have the reading as something that is out of the limits, as capacity to be assimilated and incorporated by this. And to understand as next step this idea as incorporation of things that sets the language which will soon become the program you will apply to solve the problem is kind of the idea as quantifying reality by measure, because the measurement will help to understand the intensity of responsiveness. You will do the direction and sense in the direction against the problem and not to fix, and the sense at this case is always strictly legal. We did the direction against the trust scam after have the compiled information about it, the sense all legal, and kind of there's no excuse to do not continue with this effort, I think, but not as something that you are complaining, doing things independent, I would say, but having this idea as things beyond the limits can be incorporated since affordable to be, you know, at the limit as extension or something periodically used as extended things you must do. For instance, when you do the infiltration of your agent in something illegal and this agent come back, this agent after come back should then keep the qualities they observed at the criminal organization. And if this behavior have been continued by silence, of course that sooner or later you will have to put pieces of your architecture out. Kind of, in this case, for instance, you will have to close departments or entire division of your business, putting a lot of elements out. Quite simple to get. The dismissal list is not an option. It's a dismissal list by criminal activity, and of course that the consequence will be much better at the side of the law. By the program made that you know the rules of the game and the consequence when you kind of are not affordable as something standardized legally taught. Have a great week.